Speech for Communications 2140. The New York Times editorial titled Firearms Toll Among the Youth is more or less a drawn-out claim of policy stating that the wounding and death of youngsters is a national health crisis that deserves far more attention. I'm going to show you how the New York Times fails to create a convincing argument for such a compelling subject because of its poor organization, the unclear call to action, and the lack of proof for its subclaims. The editorial starts off with an attention grabber as it mentions the Newtown, Connecticut shooting, but then it forgets to mention the actual main claim until the very end of the article, the actual last sentence. In between the beginning of the article and the main claim lies two lazily structured paragraphs, the first of which is a lump of facts all from one source, and no compelling argument has ever been made using just one source. The second paragraph talks about the duck and cover drills in place at elementary schools to protect kids from intruders with weapons. While the goal was to show how horrific it is that those drills are in place to begin with, the editorial missed the mark and essentially just explained a solution to the availability of firearms and their presence in schools. The gun lobbyists could actually use that to their advantage in their arguments. And then to finish the editorial, the New York Times references its only source once again to say that it showed that very few of the shootings in 2009 occurred in schools, and it then goes into a feeble attempt to negate that fact. The New York Times had the opportunity to grab the public's attention, state their main claim, and then go on to convince us of what we should do to change the accessibility of firearms to kids, but it never actually does that. Plenty of studies exist that explain all the different effects of guns on children. The futureofchildren.org has an entire journal titled Children, Youth, and Gun Violence, and the journal contains 12 different articles by 12 separate authors, and they each analyze multiple aspects of the subject itself. And all of those 12 articles have multiple sources. If the New York Times wants to convince anybody of anything, they should provide an excessive number of sources so that their argument is irrefutable. Just recently, Venture Beat, for example, conducted an investigation that discovered kids buying guns via promoters of gun ownership on Facebook, and the kids were told that they don't even need any identification to purchase the weapons. To quote the editorial's main claim, it says that the wounding and death of youngsters is a national health crisis that deserves far more attention. This could be seen as a claim of policy because it contains a call to action, but what is it really? Because it's just asking us to pay attention to a topic. It's just asking us to sit and wait for something to happen. It's not asking for any action. A proper call to action would ask for a monetary donation or attendance at a rally of some sort to promote the cause. And this one just wants us to wait for Congress to do something, even though later it tells us that Congress isn't doing anything. Furthermore, the editorial doesn't actually make its own stance on gun ownership. Its stance is just being against adolescents having guns, and in reality, that's everyone's stance. Nobody wants a bunch of, elementary schoolers running around with guns. But does the editorial want to ban guns completely? Does it want to put regulations on the purchasing and selling of guns? We have no idea because it doesn't tell us. The editorial's best solution to the issue is to pay attention to the wounding and death of youngsters, presumably from guns. Proper rhetoric would have used inductive reasoning to go from the Newtown, Connecticut shooting as an example for what will continue and perpetuate, and it would then use a call to action far more impactful than simple attention. Proper rhetoric would also provide proof for every subclaim, but two of the editorial subclaims are left incomplete. The first being when the article states that the new threat is internal, spawned by the easy access of firearms that Congress refuses to adequately control. The editorial board should have inserted here some kind of fact about how Congress's only legislation passed since the Newtown shooting concerning firearms was to renew the expiring ban against plastic firearms. Secondly, the article ends with its main claim, and it says that it's a call to action to just pay attention to something, and it says that that's no easy task when the gun lobby continues to block research and data collection about guns. This is another part where it should have included about how the gun lobbyists have been controlling data collection for over 2 decades and included some facts about that, but instead it doesn't, and the editorial just ends. In conclusion, the editorial was on point with the growing issue of children's access to the weapons, but because of how it was so poorly organized without proof of its claims and no proper call to action was made, the argument was lost. A gun lobbyist could look at this one-page editorial and then easily not be swayed in any way. The subject deserves our attention, yes, but it also deserves an argument that forces gun lobbyists to see the impact of their passionate race to get all these guns and the impact that that has on our American youth. our youth are supposed to be the future of tomorrow, and how are they expected to do that whenever they keep killing themselves with the weapons we purchase for them? Thank you.